All right, welcome everybody. I am so excited about this group. So they are former students and alumni, and just really so happy to have all three of you back. I'm going to let you introduce yourselves, but I do want to thank you. They presented at the UC Counseling Conference, and I was just so impressed with their teamwork and how they had made the use of peer support in each other, both, I mean, emotionally, academically. It was just such a beautiful thing to hear y'all talk about. And I'd seen it as you were students too. So I will turn it over. Dr. Tracy.
Hi,
First.
I'm thank you, Dr. LA. So I'm Tracy Batondo. I'm a graduate of UC for the doctoral program in CS. I live in New Jersey and I own a private practice where I do art therapy and counseling. And I also teach as an adjunct in two programs. One's an art therapy program, the other's a counseling and art therapy program. So we're getting ready for our big storm right now.
All right. And who do you want to pass it off to?
See, Sean's mic is off.
I
So
was gonna say, I just realized I'm not muted, so I might as well go, but good evening, everyone. My name's Sean Graham, also an alum. I mean, we're all alums of the UC Doc program. I live in very northern Maine that you even hear the abouts and A's come out once in a while. Although I am Canadian, so that's just natural and organic anyways. I primarily teach at a university. I'm associate professor of counseling, and I have a small practice that I do mental health and substance abuse counseling.
my name's Natasha Collins, and I survived Dr. LA's stats class. I feel like it needs a sticker or something. Interestingly, I'm now teaching research and evaluation. So that's amazing because I have the best mentors for that. Between Dr. Poole for Qual, I don't know if she's still there, but and then Dr. LA for stats, I'm ready to go. But currently I'm core faculty with Antioch New England's clinical mental health counseling art therapy concentration program. It's an online low res program. I'm working out of New Jersey, but the program is based out of Keene, New Hampshire. Keene, New Hampshire. And I also have a small private practice where I provide a lot of clinical supervision, and I work with a lot of women experiencing perinatal mood disorders and parents just struggling to do the whole like working parent thing. And I have a free support group for moms who are therapists that I run bi-weekly on Monday nights if anyone is interested. It's free.
And the governor of New Jersey just appointed
Oh,
board.
yeah. So I recently was just appointed to the counseling board for New Jersey. So I am doing that too. So lots of fun things. Thanks. Thank you, Tracy.
Well, it's a big deal. I'm also the one that nominated her, but
Well, you guys have control. I've made you co-host. So if you have something you want to share, if you want to just talk, it's up to you, and the show is yours. Thank you.
Yeah, so we'll share our PowerPoint just because it helps us stay on track. Let me just find it here. Okay. So this is the presentation that we had done for the UC virtual conference, which was a lot of fun. And this is us graduating. Yay. Okay. So what we have, what we hope to sort of cover, but we'd like to certainly create some space for discussion as well, is really defining peer support, exploring the role of peer support in higher education, identifying risks and benefits of peer support, discussing peer support sustainability, taking a quick look at our story and sort of what makes us qualified to talk about peer support in higher education, and suggest some actionable next steps for those who are interested in really buckling down on the peer support train. Pass the torch to you, Sean.
Yeah, so thank you. So I think before we kind of jump into some of the pieces around peer support in higher ed and our story, it's helpful to kind of frame what peer support is, which is can be pretty direct in some ways, but the water can be a little muddy as well. And we know peer support's been around for hundreds and hundreds of years and started becoming more formalized with self-help groups like Alcoholics Anonymous. But we really saw where the roots became strengthened in the 70s through the consumer survivor movement, and a little more study began happening, really increasing its acceptance and use that we see in intentional peer support practices today. And so peer support as a phenomenon really has kind of some different definitions, but there's core elements that are pretty consistent throughout them. And I'll share a few of those definitions to help frame what we're talking about today. So one is that peer support can be thought of as a process of mutual support where people voluntarily come together to help each other address a common or shared problem. Peer support's also been defined as a process of developing equitable relationships with the intention of personal change. And so fundamentally, peer support really is the experience of people with similar or shared lived experiences working together, supporting one another in a variety of different ways. And we really extend this definition to not only responding to kind of a common or shared problem, but this idea of working towards a common or shared goal. And we included this quote here from Steve Harrington, who was one of the founders of the National Association of Peer Supporters in 2004. And he noted, and I think it's at the end of this quote, that it's not limited to mental health or substance use recovery. And he believed that it's a natural response that we can have when an individual experiencing a particular situation reaches out for support to others who've had a similar or shared or going through experience. And he highlighted in this that it's the act, it's process that we've talked about. And I think one of the important pieces to think of in peer support is that it's a process, a course of action that we're talking about supports personal change among peers. And we framed it really that kind of forward moving or growth change. And so it's important, though, when we're talking about peer support, that we don't confuse that with social support. If you could jump to the next slide, please. And peer support happens in many different ways, but it's important to understand that it is not social support. And social support has a place. It has a function. There's benefits that many people experience from each of these, but there's fundamental differences between the two. Social support really is a type of support, but it happens through much different relationships. Social support really kind of is happens through friends, happens with family, but it excludes that element of having a shared experience that's found within peer support. And again, right, social support can be really critical and vital to many people and their natural support systems, but they're not equal and they're not the same thing, because peer support extends beyond even the shared experience, that it's building on equitable relationships. That's not always found within social support. And if we can jump again to the next slide, please. So formal peer support is thought of as a more structured model, if you will, while still happening in different ways. And we see more formal instances of peer support in places like the recovery community and mental health and self-help groups and those sorts of pieces. And we see it extending into our communities. And I have a particular soft spot for first responders, and I've done quite a bit of work with them, and we're seeing it grow within those communities. Naturally occurring peer support, on the other hand, is what our experience has been. And naturally occurring peer support can happen directly or indirectly. And when I say naturally occurring, meaning that it wasn't planned, it wasn't facilitated, it wasn't something that someone said, hey, you're going to go support one another. It's something that kind of organically grew out of our shared experiences and opportunities that we had together in our doctoral program. And there's different forms of naturally occurring peer support, but we believe it's important to highlight how it can occur. And the understanding of direct support is just direct peer support is just that. It's intentionally reaching out to support a peer, talking about a tough exam or a paper or how to approach identifying a topic for your dissertation or the methodology that you're going to use. And indirect is a little more subtle, and it happens through humor or sending words of encouragement. I think it's important when we're talking about this idea of peer support and the benefits of it, that it happens in a couple of ways, because it can happen when it's actually you've received peer support. But I think in our own experiences in the literature highlights, even if someone perceives receiving that support can be a very meaningful experience. So I'm going to pass it off and we'll talk, I think, a little bit about peer support in higher ed.
So this is just looking at the ways the different program structures might help or hinder the development of peer support. So we can look at, distance education versus brick and mortar, synchronous versus asynchronous program structures, or the cohort versus non-cohort model. And I think that there are definitely some ways that the structure of a program can really, like, for example, with a brick and mortar program, it can be a more casual, or the way that Sean was talking about, indirect way to connect with peers before a class starts. If you are sitting together in person waiting for an instructor to come in, there's, you arrive a little bit early, or the class finishes and then you might move with your peers to another classroom, or you might have a break between classes and say, like, hey, why don't we go grab a coffee between classes? We have this class and the next class together. Having the option for those really indirect opportunities to engage in peer support, it can happen a little bit more naturally and fluidly in a brick and mortar program, which leaves sometimes students in distance programs, especially distance programs that are also asynchronous, can make peer support opportunities really challenging. You're not necessarily, like, outside of maybe discussion board opportunities or opportunities that the instructor might be creating, where you have the option of connecting with your instructor or your student, but it's not required. Certainly distance education, asynchronous formats, and non-cohort models are less likely to create those circumstances of that indirect peer support. So we want to be mindful around program structures and look at how is the program structure impacting our students' wellness from the peer support perspective. And if our program structure is distance, if it is asynchronous, if it is non-cohort model, or even regardless of those factors, what as a program are we doing, or what as a student am I doing, or are we doing together as a student body to create those opportunities for either indirect or direct peer support? And understanding that how the program is structured might be lending itself or not lending itself to some of those opportunities to connect and support one another.
Okay. This is me, right?
Yeah, this is you.
We can go to the next slide. So when we're thinking about peer support, you know, I think if we look at the bigger program, but the bigger picture about why peer support is important is because it really comes down to attrition. So 50% of graduate students don't graduate, and that's even higher, 70 for doctoral programs, 70%. So really what that means is there's a very high dropout rate in graduate studies, and that's particularly concerning for programs like UCs where they're preparing counselors to go out and, you know, work in the mental health field where there is really a need. We need more counselors, we need more mental health professionals. So we need to take a look at, like, how do we make sure that students who enter a program who have the capabilities of being a good counselor finish so they can go out and do the important work that they're, you know, intending to. And there's, you know, several factors that impact degree completion. It's not just on the program either. It's a lot more nuanced. So, you know, financial support is a really big aspect. You know, can someone pay for graduate school, or can they pay for the basic necessities when they're in the program? You know, how is the program quality? Is it a good program? If a program isn't as good and not giving the student what they need, they're more likely to drop out. Are they getting professional guidance? Is there opportunities for mentoring and advising? Are they getting family support, right? How is the social environment within the program or outside? But another big factor is peer support. Is our students getting the peer support that they need during their graduate studies? And that's really what we're looking at with our slides, our presentation. So really there's a need for peer support, and pro-social relationships in academia can help mitigate stress. They can create opportunities to learn from one another. It can foster team building. It can reduce a sense of social isolation that students sometimes feel in the academic environment, and it fosters social connectedness. And these things help with persistence rates. So this helps students stay in programs and complete the programs. So when we look at evidence-based interventions to try to help with peer support, we know that these help to increase resiliency. It increases that social experience that they're needing. When there's opportunities for face-to-face interactions, both online and in person, helps to increase these opportunities for peer support. Whenever there could be opportunities built in for students to connect, like what we're doing here, or when we participated in the UC conference, you know, if you're doing group work or discussion boards, like how are teachers creating opportunities for students to connect within the classroom and outside the classroom? Building a sense of community, you know, feeling like you belong is really important in graduate school, and providing mentorship opportunities. So the ability to connect with people who are in the fields, who have graduated, who are doing the work, like what we're doing, coming back as alumni.
And I believe that's me. If yeah. And I
That's
think part of what we're trying to highlight, especially for the students here this evening, is that the relationships you develop within your academic programs can, and I think for a number of different people, extend beyond graduation into your personal lives and in your professional careers. And as we were just kind of talking about, relationships built on peer support increase connection and well-being. It really can challenge those feelings of being isolated, and really can be a resource and a coping skill or support system, if you will. And the literature we explored for this, and I think we were even looking at some other areas when we were talking about topics of interest around this, noted that, you know, as a student, the weight of being engaged in the scholarly community really can be challenging and heavy and affect an individual's well-being. And what they found, that people reported feelings and experiences of inspiration and empowerment, strengthening their well-being when they were connected with peers. And that's part of what we're talking about with the attrition rates and extending beyond your doctoral studies as counselor educators and practitioners and scholars and advocates, right, and leaders in the field, is you can build this network of peers to help support the work that you're doing, and that strength and well-being again continues or can continue well beyond your training. And with that, I think it's important to consider how to sustain some of these relationships and some of the potential benefits. If you can advance us a little bit, please. So I think, like with many things, and we've talked about, to maintain relationships requires that we are intentional in how we approach our relationships. It requires a commitment from everyone, right, involved in that relationship, not only from what you receive, but what you offer and what you bring to the table. And we were actually talking a little bit earlier this evening, before even this training, about how at different times over the years, people have carried little bits, a little bit more than others, depending on what was happening in each other's life. And it's just kind of balanced out over time that whoever had more bandwidth kind of did more, but it's been pretty equitable over time. And we're going to share our stories in a few minutes, and hopefully you'll be able to hear and see the benefits that we've experienced. This happened because we really tried to protect time, to prioritize our time together in meeting. And it's really extended beyond, right, our beginning to help each other in classes for years after into our personal and professional lives. But it required time and effort again, and that we need to nurture these relationships. And we talked about earlier about the value and meaning of peer support from when it's actually received, or even just perceiving that can happen. And, you know, while it can be different for everyone, we found from our experiences that it functions to support each of us in some similar and in some different ways. And looking at it more from kind of a macro level, if you will, these sustained relationships support our growth and development as counselors, even when we may be at different points in our careers, having different maybe research agendas, different roles and responsibilities within the broader counseling profession. But sustaining these relationships support our development or the ongoing development of our identities. You know, I'm not a young man anymore. I'm not old, but, you know, I'm certainly grayer than I used to be. But I'm continuing to grow as a counselor, and my identity continues to evolve to some degree. And that's been nurtured and supported through not only my professional development activities, but these types of relationships that we have. And they allow us to extend our network, not only within our small group with one another, but our broader networks that we each have with each other. And so with that, in respect to time, like maybe let's transition over to our story.
Okay. So how we met, how we formed our peer support group, not our social support group, our peer support group. Very indirectly, we were on our way home from our first residency at University of the Cumberlands. And Tracy and I both live in New Jersey. And as Sean mentioned, he lives at way up. And but Sean happened to be taking a flight that we were on that was connecting through New Jersey. So we had spent our first residency, like, you know, just very kind of tentatively, you know, looking around and watching other students and observing and not really, you know, knowing like who to talk to or what to do or who to talk about, like, you know, all of those kinds of anxious first residency things. But we started chatting a little bit in the van on the way to the airport. And then we actually realized we were sitting next to each other on the plane. So we were all kind of on a row together on the plane, and we pulled out onto the tarmac, and then like we got all of these like weather alerts on our phones, you know, those very loud kind of sirens, and we got a tornado warning. So, Sean is not a strong traveler, not a strong flyer to begin with. So the panic set in, and then Tracy and I went into counselor mode and we're just like, we got you, like we got. So we started, talking more and everything. And then so we helped Sean get through the airport, and it was just like a very rom-commy kind of like serendipitous, friendship situation that was happening. And so we survived our first residency. Luckily the tornado didn't come through, it blew over, but it got very dark, it got very scary. And we couldn't turn, once we got out onto the tarmac, we were too far out to turn around, so we just had to shake for a little while in this little tinny airplane. It was petrifying, but we got through it. So after we had this kind of experience on the way home from residency, we started having kind of periodic classes together. Sometimes it was Tracy and I in class, sometimes Sean and Tracy in class, sometimes Sean and I in class. And then we all came together in Dr. Poole's qualitative research class we took together sort of midway through our program. And we formed our qualitative survival group at that point. And we started meeting regularly as a qualitative survival group, which was the name of our group on our Google Calendar. And then from there, we moved into more classes, inferential stats classes. And then inevitably, we ended up being in dissertation all around the same time. But we had started realizing the value of peer support earlier on, starting with this flight after our first residency, and then moving into supporting each other academically through some of our more challenging research classes. And then coming into dissertation together, we had somewhat been meeting regularly during class time, but at the point that we got to dissertation, we really realized we needed to make that commitment, have that accountability. And at that point, our qualitative survival group became the dream team. And then we just plugged into our calendars bi-weekly every 2 weeks throughout the remainder of our dissertation time together. We met very regularly every 2 weeks as a group, and we talked about everything dissertation related. But then what we also realized is that at least for half of the time we were meeting, we were also talking about professional related things we were experiencing, personal related things that we were experiencing. And through this process of having peer support through academia, we became friends, and on a really deep level. And then when we all passed our dissertation, which we have some nice celebratory pictures about, we had already made this commitment and already found all of these wonderful ways that this peer support group was functioning, that we continued to have these dream team meetings even beyond graduation. So we started these regular meetings probably back in like 2021, and we still have a regular dream team calendar appointment like every 2 weeks to this day. So these are some of the ways that our dream team peer support group has supported how I felt supported through this. One way that we support each other is through self-care accountability, celebrating each other's cultural tradition. So here's a photograph of this was celebrating Canada Day for Sean. So we celebrate each other's traditions. We know about the traditions that feel important to each of us, and we carve out that time to celebrate that for one another. We create this space for encouragement, for sharing, for celebrating. And we also have like it was a very weird spiritual connection that we have. So we look at the ways that we might be struggling from a self-care perspective, and then we notice things that are around us, and then we might bring that into our peer support group. So we've had discussions about the spiritual meanings of birds that we're seeing, and the ways that the eagles that Sean has been seeing in the woods and how that might mean that we need more balance in our lives. And we have an unusual connection where my birthday, Tracy's husband's birthday, and Sean's wife's birthday are all the same. So that was a very like do kind of like thing as well. But I feel a lot of cultural and spiritual support through our peers, our time together, and that's something that the peer support helps fill me up. The ways that peer support helps fill me up. Tracy, I'll pass to you.
Thank you. Well, yeah, so I think that's a good way to say it, that the peer support group like helps you feel like full, like it fills you up when there's so much that can like so many roles we have that can deplete us. And I can use that term because that is part of Natasha's dissertation. And we have learned about each other's research interests because we spend so much time like talking about each other's work. So here I have some examples of like usually we connect through our like pet babies or like Natasha like real babies, and we'll send pictures back and forth to each other. But you know, we also try to keep each other really connected and involved even when we're not together. So Sean wasn't able to make it to graduation. So what you see here are some pictures. This is what happens when you're friends with art therapists. They take a photo of you and blow it up and then pass it around to all the professors during graduation. And there was like a running joke that Sean would show up to class sometimes with like the Viking helmet on. So I like photoshopped the Viking helmet onto his photo I stole from his university's website. So we wanted to make sure that he still felt connected, even though he wasn't there. And we were, you know, sending him photos when Natasha and I were in Kentucky for our graduation. So it's just been really, I think, important for us to stay really connected with each other in different ways. We really have intentionally found ways to, stay in each other's lives.
And I think, I really would echo what, Natasha and Tracy have shared in terms of connection and meaning. And I think about it even from the perspective or experience of living in a very small rural area. Not a lot of counselors, a lot of social workers. The institution I teach at is a teaching institution, doesn't place a lot of emphasis on publishing or doing research or presenting or doing anything like that. And having friends, having peers to talk about my identity, my goals, my interests, I would even say that stepping outside of my comfort zone and increasing my confidence. And it's interesting, right? Like I can get up in front of a classroom and it's wonderful and I can talk and I don't even think about it and we can do what we do, but presenting, right, at a conference or something like that is an entirely different animal. And through this has helped push me kind of outside of that comfort zone to submit proposals at conferences where we've done quite a few together, where we've submitted and supported one another like that, which is something I probably wouldn't do on my own. But having that support and that encouragement even led to where like we're presenting at AMCA in June, the American Mental Health Counseling Association this year, that I don't know that I would have, a year or 2 years ago even had considered doing something, or maybe not considered, would have been willing to do something like that. But having that support and those relationships, like, sure, why not? Let's go do this. I think one of the other things, in sharing, and I don't remember if it was you, Natasha, who mentioned, like, we've developed strong friendships that's come through this peer support that we've had. And I think, like was mentioned, like I wasn't able to make it to graduation because of some family responsibilities, but they made sure that I did have a graduation. and that I was able to have that experience even though I wasn't there. And that's powerful, right? It was very meaningful to me. And this next slide, if you will, was actually when I had defended, and they made sure to make a point to get together and support me. So not only was it holding my hand when I thought the plane was going to get flipped over in a tornado, or navigating Newark Airport, or those sorts of things. It's extended, if you will, through graduation and into our personal and professional lives. And now I know have lifelong friends and colleagues. We're going to be staying together at an Airbnb when we go to North Carolina this summer to present at this conference. So let's transition over to next steps. We'll maybe try to go through some of these quickly so that we can take some time to talk and answer questions you might have. And hopefully my little helper here this evening doesn't step on the keyboard or anything. So sorry for the tails running back and forth. Just some considerations that we would encourage you to think of. We have Be Present, Observe, which is be in the moment when you're in those moments in classes, at residency, opportunities to connect with one another. And when we say observe, we're meaning listen, be present. Does someone have an area of interest that's similar to yours? Are you hearing someone talk about something that's challenging that might be similar to yours? And to some degree, step outside those areas where you feel kind of comfortable or safe sometimes, and make them safe steps. But like I said about even my idea of presenting at a conference is something that I wouldn't necessarily do. And maybe you wouldn't necessarily reach out to someone at a residency or after a class or something like that. And I can assure you from my own lived experiences, and I feel pretty confident sharing the same for Tracy and Natasha, that doing those sorts of things have really, I mean, they've had pretty profound impacts on life, right? Personal and professional. So take those safe risks and be intentional about what it is that you're trying to navigate and do. And we talk about doing this inside and outside of the class. And I think I might just kind of end it there because we've only got a little bit of time left. And we want to really have a dialogue with you if you have questions, comments, we'd like to talk.
Thank you all for that. That was really special and so sweet to hear that story. Tonda is so good about this. Tonda pushes peer support, like not pushes, I shouldn't say that, that's a bad word. She encourages peer support in such a beautiful way, and she's so good about organizing like a Teams group and like when can we meet to write, and not that I'm ever showing up, but it's so encouraging because the last 2 weekends I've been traveling, so and I'm thinking about Tonda while she's writing and I want to spend time with her, but it's so Tonda, thank you so much for doing it. You do it in such a beautiful way and you're so consistent and it's so encouraging, and it does decrease the experience of isolation, because just knowing like Tonda is writing right now, and as soon as I am done on this 5-hour drive, I'm going to be writing too. And it really is so encouraging. So thank y'all for sharing your story. And I just wanted to just praise Tonda for how well she does.
Good job, Tonda. You're like living what we're talking about. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it's been, well, I'll say I'm grateful to Lisa because she put a bigger cohort of us together. And so if it wasn't for Lisa, we wouldn't have been able, well, possibly. The connections might be different, right? And especially in this space where we're minority Black women, the support has been great. And so I was at your presentation for UC and I thought it was amazing. And my dissertation is going to be on mentorship. So there's a connection there because I do believe it takes that community to help us get through. It's a very challenging process. Most things, right? It helps to have support, peer support, formal, informal, whatever the case may be. So this is something that I truly believe in and it works.
It does. And you know, in counseling, we talk a lot sometimes about like supervision is how we get our support, and even like group supervision. And like, this is just another really important component. And I think in being successful counselors, not only I think it's needed to survive the program to become a counselor, but there's a reason why we sustained it afterwards, because it is so effective. And you know, we've talked about cases and ways to be better, you know, clinicians to show up for our clients. It's also connected. Like, there really isn't like a separation, you know, a lot of times with your professional identity, that it's all just so interconnected. So yeah, it's important.
But I love,
think-
yeah,
oh,
go ahead,
sorry,
Sean,
go
you
ahead.
go. You go.
Well, I was just going to add that I think, you know, it even extends beyond our clinical practice and our supervision. You know, we're all involved at the state level on state boards or licensing boards. And so I think even as a discipline in trying to advance our discipline and identities as counselors, those are even conversations that we've had at different times about not pushing or challenging each other about what we're doing and kind of planting seeds or supporting and nurturing someone who's thinking about how much bandwidth do I have, but you know, it's a good opportunity and I could help and benefit that way. That, you know, those are other outcomes that have kind of occurred, I think maybe parallel more than as a direct result of, but what we're doing.
Last time we gave this presentation, one of the UC students had asked us about how do we organize ourselves to do like either research together or presentations together, because it can be really challenging to get, so you know, to have people sort of moving forward in the same direction at the same time. So one thing that's really helped us to help each other professionally advance is just to number one, be really invested in seeing each other succeed. So taking out, you know, the competition piece of it, which can happen really easily, especially in academic programs. And especially when you're seeing other people get to different points in their program that you want to be at, or when you're really wanting to have opportunities to present or get published, it could be easy to say like, well, why isn't that happening for me? Or I want to be there, like all of that kind of piece of it. So what we did to really support each other is in the process of being invested in the work that each of us were doing. When we were thinking about presentations where we wanted to, opportunities that we wanted to have to present, for example, the American Counseling Association is a really big conference. They only accept about 30% of the proposals that they receive. What we did is we each had our own research focus, and then we had a focus that we were doing together, which was around peer support. And we've had other focuses that we've done together too. But when we each made a proposal for one of our own research interests, we added each other as co-authors. And so what we did is we agreed to become experts in each other's research, but we all had our independent own leads. So we ended up, between the three of us, we ended up submitting 4 proposals, one that was our research, and then 3 that were our independent research projects, and we added each other as co-authors to everyone. So it increased exponentially the likelihood that we would have an opportunity to have a proposal accepted, where we would all be able to go and attend and present. So we got so lucky. 3 out of our 4 proposals ended up getting accepted, which was amazing. But if only one of those out of the 4 had have been accepted, we still would have been able to say like, yeah, we had a proposal accepted at ACA, and like, how cool is that? Especially considering the low acceptance rate. And the same, it can be true for publications too. And I think you don't necessarily have to be in a full like deeply involved in each other's research all the time, but to want to be able to see each other succeed, to want to give each other those opportunities to participate in conferences and research and presentations. Like, it's easy enough to say, like, do you want in on this? Like, do you want in on this? If I do this, like, are you there with me? Can we get each other up to speed in a way that helps you be a part of this in a meaningful way? And I think that those are ways that we've been able to help each other not just personally grow, like whether it's through creating, how do we create space for our families, or how do we create space to take care of ourselves, but how do we create space to support each other grow professionally and have those opportunities for success in counselor education and supervision.
Yeah, and I like how you said that we really have removed the competition and it's more accountability, which is what I think, like Destiny, we were saying that Tonda does for you is, just by her inviting you into that space and you knowing that she's doing it, you're a part of it, like it is a motivator, right? It is very contagious when you're around people who are like being really successful with what they're doing. Like I'm always amazed at what Natasha and Sean are doing, and it's very like it's just very motivating. Like it's exciting. It keeps you excited.
Is that like Bruce Moon who calls it creative contagion? Is that
Yeah.
Bruce Moon? Yeah.
That's a Bruce
Mhm.
Moon thing. That's
Yeah.
Bruce Moon's a really famous art therapist. So his idea is like you can't you have to be creating art if you want other people to be creating art, because the act of you creating art is really contagious. So if you're not practicing, the same thing, right? Like if we're not practicing self-care, our clients are going to be less likely to take care of themselves. Like it's they know we're not being so genuine. So yeah, there's a term called creative contagion.
Like
So
peer support is exactly that place to create like creative contagion. We're all talking about the amazing, wonderful, creative things that we're doing, and how that inspires each of us to be better, as well.
I just want to speak to the power of this because I will age myself. I graduated from my doctoral program 20 years ago, and I am still connected to my cohort, right? It's like these are the people who call me for support and I call them for support. I mean, just last week I heard from 2 of them who were looking for something and, getting to support each other in that process. And I was just sharing a story with Destiny today about somebody in my doctorate, kind of team that we've supported each other throughout our careers and how we've done that. So this is real and it lasts. It really can be a lasting investment that really pays off.
yeah, well, it's like you have these people who built in that get you, like as supportive and lovely as my like family and friends are, they haven't gone through it, so they don't understand it the same way. And I see everyone's shaking their heads, so like you're getting it. So like it is a big part of the support system, because you know it's important to feel like someone gets you and the work you're doing.
The other thing we do really well around the accountability piece is not just helping each other to be accountable in ways that are adding, like action oriented, like I want to do this and I want to achieve this goal. We also help each other stay accountable in terms of like, are you doing too much? And like there's ways that we've been able to say, like, with love and kindness, like, I think you're doing too much. And how can I encourage you to take a little something off your plate? Like, where do you need to say no? And how can I also support you to say no? And that's been a really nice other way we've been able to hold each other accountable, is to be like objective sounding boards around just sort of like gently tracking what each other has on the plate, and thinking about how we come into the space and like I'm notoriously bad at sleeping and and the way that like my sleeping behaviors are compared to Sean's, he's always just like, no, this is not good. You are not doing, you need to do less. So they've been really good. A lot of my conversations right now in our dream team space has been around how do I sort of consolidate the different things that I'm doing and work to do less and create more space for those different roles, whether it's, educator, mom, wife, all of those things, and sort of streamline it and do less in a way that is also doing more by doing less. So that's been a really beautiful part of the accountability through our peer support is when you have that trust, that friendship, those meaningful connections, it's also feels safe enough to be able to say like it's you're going too far. You need to, pump the brakes.
Well, I think even like you're saying, even the idea of being vulnerable, right? When we need to be is we have that space that we can open up and put those things out there. Like I'm not sure about, or I need to talk through.
Mhm.
Can be really meaningful.
So I don't know about you guys, but I kind of want to hear a little bit from, I know we're not a big group, but I want to hear a little bit more about what others have been doing for peer support during the program, or maybe some ideas that maybe kind of popped into your head after hearing our story and how we've integrated peer support into our lives. Like, I kind of want to know more from you guys.
I have a couple of chat groups that I'm connected with that I've got connected in different classes. One of them was in Dr. Stretch's class because we were all like, we're going to be bald by the end of class. So we've got like, a group that was like, just really got connected in that class. Like, I don't understand this. Can you help me with this? And we still today like text back and forth. Like, I just did a check-in like, hey, it's halfway through the semester. Just checking in to see how you guys are doing. I mean, we're all in different classes now. But it was nice that everybody's chiming in. I think there's 10 or 12 of us in that group, I think, or maybe there's not that many, but it feels like that. But everybody's chiming in. And then I've got a small group that I started, I think met in my second class. And we just kind of check in with each other throughout the semester, or if they're having trouble, we text back and forth or sometimes get on a call together. So we don't necessarily put it on a calendar, but we're all connected in a way where we can, still touch base. Or if we're needing help on an assignment, we've actually, I already took that class, maybe look into this kind of material or whatever, kind of guiding where they might want to go to get some assistance for an assignment. So it is very helpful. And especially for those of us who have families along with going to school, our families are, my husband says that he's walking across the stage with me with his honorary doctorate. And I'm sure everybody else's spouse feels the same way. Their kids are probably, in tow. So they walk along with you, but they don't necessarily get all the nuances of what we do, kind of like what Dr. Tracy was saying. So I don't know, it's really helpful for me. So
That's awesome. And I think, I don't know if, did Dr. LA, did you make her class do a group together? Because I think for ours, you like told us that we had to have a peer study
Yeah.
group.
It was encouraged, but now this semester it's actually required, which Destiny is one of my lab group. She leads a lab group. So as a TA now, which is a nice resource as well.
So
And that's all
that's an example of how it could be built into the class.
right. And then emerge and can keep that. I saw Jail come off mute.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna add to what Destiny and Tanda were talking about. Lisa started a group in the fall of 2022. That's when I started. And just, as Tanda said, for Black women, it can be challenging. And just watching your PowerPoint at the fact that 70% of those who enroll in doctoral studies drop out. I say it all the time. If it were not for the group, I probably would have dropped out that very first semester because that's how it felt like. But just hanging around those ladies, and it's informal, but yet plays a big role in what I do. And Dr. Stretch and team recently started the writing group that has been very helpful, except that was it this last week I wasn't able to attend because I'm in Central. It was 7 a.m.
We are moving it around. We're moving it around so many people can attend. Yeah.
So I missed that one, but they've been very helpful as well. Even though it's just quiet time and working quietly, but it's a motivator to get work done. So I agree. I'm glad you all thought about actually doing it intentionally and making it formal. And I wish every school had that.
We may
Yeah.
be able to expand the writing groups next. This was really a pilot to see if people were interested in it. It's been really, I think, pretty well attended, and we're excited about it.
Yeah, I think so too, because I was able to attend the first two and missed last week because it was 7 a.m.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
The day's almost half over at 7 in the morning.
Oh, Sean's.
Yeah, like it's past my bedtime right now.
That's when 7 a.m. It's maybe by that time I've just slept 2 or 3 hours. So.
Well, I think that's something that I'm probably still struggling with is like the switching from like doc student to like normal person. It's like it really is like such a lifestyle shift that it's like, oh wait, I don't have to like work through the night.
Wait a
And,
minute. You made a shift? Like I'm like
No,
20
I
years old.
haven't
I'm still
really.
like, what?
This is that thing that Natasha was saying. We're like trying to like work on taking things off of our plates. 'cause
Dr.
it's
Bumpini
like-
and I missed that lesson
I
completely.
was like, my schedule is still, it just expands. So we don't expect our doc students to like be on
We're
meetings.
just trying to
at-
graduate our 2 daughters from dance. That will give
Yeah,
us like a plethora
right.
of time.
Yeah, like it's just your day just expands, right? I don't even know. Like it's not even a schedule anymore. It just is this amorphous thing.
Oh, that's good to know, Tonda. That's nice to know. If you want to send that to me, I'll make sure it gets out in scholarly engagement.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Well, I just
Tanya's
want to
gonna have
thank.
I was just gonna say, Tana's gonna have a resource section on peer support in her dissertation.
Yeah,
Just you
that's
wait.
awesome. I'm excited to read it some point. That'll be great. Well, I just want to thank you guys for coming back and doing your encore presentation. I just loved your presentation and thought it was such an important message. I know it's been such a valuable part of my life. And so I just was so glad to have you back, and thank you for letting me record it so I can make you famous and put you on the UC Counseling YouTube. And yeah, thank you again. And thank y'all for being here. And I hope that this has been helpful and you can spread the word about peer support and really do a shout out for that. So thank you all and have a great, great night.
Thanks
Thank
for
you for having us.
Yes,
Nice
you're
meeting
welcome.
Good luck. Good luck, everybody.